Hello, Chiori-chan here with another video on how to use Chiori-chan's web server. Today I was planning to go over a basic installation tutorial on how to set up the web server. I'm hoping to, by creating these videos, to get some interest in the project and to hopefully get some users. So far I've been working on this project for about the last 5 years. Being the only solo developer as well as the only solo user of the server. But I've gotten to the point that I feel like the server is ready to hopefully start bringing some more people in to either help me as a developer make it better, or start getting some users that can start using some of the more advanced features, basic features, whatever, that I don't usually get around to using even myself. So basically, to get started here, you're going to need a binary build. I went ahead and I took the liberty of downloading the latest Travis build, which is version 9.2.7. And right here, you'll see this is my open source repository over on GitHub. Anybody who's interested in looking into more of the documentation on the server, so far I only really have 2 places for that. That would either be the README here for the on GitHub. I got version history, some basic setup information, etc. I am hoping to set up a little bit more as far as documentation in the future, but so far that would be about the most complete documentation. Otherwise, I also have the Java doc hosted over on my build server. I try to personally keep this updated whenever I can. As you can see, the last version I've posted is 9.2.6. Only one version off. So to get your hands on the binaries, you have about 3 options. You either are going to want to clone my repository and build it yourself. As you should be able to see here, I use the Gradle build system. So once you clone it, you can just execute the Gradle build, all builds, including the plugins, and it really gives you a complete build. But for today, I'm going to be using my Maven repository. And just as a side note, for those of you out there who wish to write plugins for my server, this would be where you would wanna, this would be the Maven repository to use. Unfortunately, I don't have it on Maven Central, being obviously I'm kind of not quite at the point to be doing that yet. Hopefully I can find somebody down the road that can help me get something like that done. But for right now, you just basically import my repository in your Gradle build script or whatever Maven build script you're using with Java, and then right here you can put in your dependency. Of course, I only have snapshots going right now. Eventually, again, there's so much more that I'm going to be hopefully doing down the road as things improve. Your other option would be to get your binaries from my Jenkins build server. Now, of course, my Jenkins build server is a little bit older. It's not quite my most preferable way of doing things, but I have tried to keep it running. I know there's a couple bugs in here right now. For some reason, my artifacts aren't showing up. But of course, that will be something I'll be addressing here very soon when I get a chance. So to get started, we're going to go ahead over here. I've already created a folder, download the latest binary. We're going to open up a terminal, and we're going to type in Java jar and the binary name. Now, just as a note here for this video, I am a Linux user. I don't actually use Windows too often. I know a lot about Windows, but I don't actually really touch Windows very often. So for this video, just keep in mind that some things might pertain to Linux users, but as far as I'm aware, the server, I have really done my best as a Java developer to be sensitive to making sure that if there is issues with it between Windows, Linux, Mac, I have addressed them. Number one being, which seems to be a common mistake amongst Java developers, is the separator. I've always made sure to use the one Java says to use, not just, oh, here, it's /. So, to proceed here, so I'm going to go ahead and press enter. The first message you're going to see pop up, it's going to basically say, we have detected this is your first time running Chiori-chan's web server, all the files have been created and extracted. It's just basically, it's giving you the opportunity to review the configuration, make changes where need be, and proceed. For this video, I'm going to go ahead and just say no. We're just going to go ahead and start the server right up. And we'll go over here. I'm going to type in localhost. And there you go. That would be the default page that comes up for the server. So we'll go back over here. We're going to press Control-C to stop the server. And we're going to go back over here, and we're going to take a look at the configuration file. Now, I'm not going to go over everything in here because some of this stuff is deprecated, some of it is for future use. I'm just going to really just breeze over it real quickly. For starters, your first section here is for your standard HTTP. You'll notice that by default, the server uses port 8080. Reason this is because on Linux, unfortunately, unless you're the root user, by default you cannot listen on any port lower than 1024. In order to get around this for Linux users, you're either going to have to use the firewall to mask the port, or you'll. I do know that some Linux builds have the ability for you to go through the kernel to allow programs to listen on the lower ports. But of course, again, this is more of an advanced feature I'm not going to cover in this video. I can't recall what you need to search for online, but I do know there is options. Like for my own server that I run, I use the firewall just to mask the port. So the next on the list here is HTTPs. The server has the ability to use HTTPs. Unfortunately, at the moment, I don't have it set up to use default certificates that are usually issued by regular certificate issuers. And this is, so for that reason, this is going to probably be a feature that's going to change in the future. Right now, it uses key stores and secrets. I do know there's ways to convert normal certificates to key stores. Again, it's a much more advanced feature, and I'm going to just skip over the secure port for right now. So yeah, as long as this is 0, the server's just not going to use it. Next, we have TCP. Two really nice features that the server supports is a TCP ability. So if you are a developer yourself and you're looking to get a server to extend on for, centralization of data. So like if you want to write an Android app that reports over TCP, this server is going to work great for that. Because the only thing you're going to ever have to do is write a plugin. You write a plugin, drop it in, you're done. Again, going back to the fact that Maven is going to provide you perfect dependencies for that. Unfortunately, for the time being, TCP does not offer a whole lot of features. As I was saying earlier, I'm looking for people to hopefully start being able to use a lot of the features I'm not quite using yet, or have gotten an opportunity to use very much. TCP I do have some plans for it in the future, but again, I haven't gotten to it quite yet. The server also supports WebSocket. It's actually built in. The server is built on top of Netty. And I have programmed in WebSocket ability. So if you ever have a WebSocket client connect, it's actually connecting to the same backend daemon, I guess you could say, that the TCP uses. So eventually it's going to be a very similar, and I'm going to start building in some default like authentication and etc, etc. But for now, it's kind of a dunce of a feature. So then lastly, as far as any type of network communication, we have Query. Now, Query is a telnet-like feature. because something you might have noticed when I started the server was that there was no console, or also known as terminal. I had to press Control-C to shut it down. Earlier in the day, back in, I don't know, I think I changed this back in like version 7, there did used to be a terminal. And it was a nice feature to have, except it did seem to be a little heavyweight, per se. For those who are looking for a nice lightweight server, they just pop in, boot it. It's like, you know, I really was looking, when I started the server, I didn't want to just become the next Tomcat. I wanted to program something that people coming from PHP and Apache to something more secure like Java could feel a little bit more at home with. Because that was my problem, is when I came into Java, I felt a little alienated to the fact that things like Tomcat are so different. So, to continue here without being ranting, so basically what Query does is it took that server that was using originally JLine in the older versions and allows you just to connect over Telnet to the server. It gives a lot of the same features such as stop, and there's also logins. But anyways, I will probably cover Query more in another video. Let's see, we can just skip over here. Here's admin. This is where you're, again, it's not a feature, not quite working, but point is if the server has exceptions or other errors, you'll send them there. Right here we have the development mode. This is just if the server ever throws exceptions, with development mode on, it will print the entire exception to the page. With it off, it just basically says, oh, there was an exception. So that's basically all that does. Right here we have our temp and web directory. As you can see, here's webroot. This contains the website files. And of course, here's our temp directory. Next we have error reporting. This feature, again, not quite very much in use yet, but the idea is this is going to be just like PHP. Matter of fact, it uses the same PHP variables to the fact of what to enable, what not to enable. And then lastly here, I'm just going to say that this is our database configuration for the server. By default, the server uses a SQLite database. You can see right here, server.db, it generated it on the load. So by default, it just uses a SQLite, and there's some stuff it keeps in there. Like one of the things you'll notice here that the server has built-in accounts, it has built-in sessions, it has built-in sites. All this stuff has secondary options to be stored in the database. In the earlier versions of the server, this stuff was by default in a database, and at the time I also didn't have SQLite enabled at the moment. So unfortunately it was kind of harder to use because you had to set up a MySQL database, and so that's why in my most recent versions I have finally enabled SQLite, as well as a lot of this stuff can actually be stored as files now. So I'm going to stop right there as far as configuration. There's a lot in here like auto updater, which I don't think the auto updater is working at the moment. Yeah, there's a lot in here. I could make probably a 15-minute video on that alone. So we're going to go ahead and start the server back up again. And we are going to... Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm mixticking here. Let's stop that again. I'm just going to show you a basic plugin load up. So for what I'm going to go ahead and show you, feature, is just the fact that a plugin can basically drop in here. Let's go ahead and we'll drop the Xing and the ZXing, not really sure how to say there, and the email plugin. Of course, I can go over more about what these plugins are in another video. We'll go ahead and start the server again. Now, one feature I would like to note, as you can see what was happening here in the console, is the server has built-in native library support. Basically, a plugin, in this case the ZXing plugin, has native libraries that are required in order for it to function. Well, in order to make the server lightweight, or even in that fact the plugin lightweight, and possibly due to some licensing issues, you don't have to put those native you don't have to distribute those native libraries with your plugin. So if you ever write a plugin that requires native libraries, you don't have to include them. Or I should say libraries in this case. It does have native library support. Sorry, I'm actually mistaken there. Just libraries. Again, I'm going to be doing more videos on plugin development, but you can actually just define your libraries right in your plugin. When you load the plugin, the server will automatically download the required libraries from Maven Central. And then right here, you'll see that the plugins were being enabled, or loaded, and then right here, you'll see they're being enabled. So, very quick, very simple, and I'm going to end this video on that note, and I will see everybody in the next video.